the star, the NFC East, the Dallas Cowboys, where we get the start, the defending NFC East champions. Alex, a team has not repeated in the NFC East in 20 years now. Philadelphia Eagles are the last team to do it 20 years ago. Been a long time since we've had a repeat champion in the NFC East. And this Dallas team, more so than anything, this offseason, because they were really handcuffed by the situation with Dak Prescott's contract. Dak will play the final year of his contract here. He's not under contract past this year. With the way this quarterback market is, there's a big question mark of if Dak will be there past this season. The Cowboys didn't do much this offseason. Their big offensive acquisition is they brought Ezekiel Elliot back and drafted Tyler Guyton on the offensive line. That's not just all their departures on the bottom. They lost two key offensive linemen in Biedza and of course, Tyron Smith, who hasn't played a lot the last few years due to injury. Tony Pollard leaves to go to Tennessee, but I don't really think that's a huge thing. I thought Pollard was a shell of himself after the broken leg he suffered, Alex. But Dallas, this is, as we know, it's at least make the NFC Championship game or bust, probably win the Super Bowl or bust. And his roster is not good enough, at least from my perspective, to be considered one of the true contenders to win the Lombardi this year.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far either, but I do still think it is a two-horse race between them and the Eagles to win this division. Of course, the other teams are making moves. Commanders should be much improved, but I do think it is a pretty big drop-off from Tony Pollard going back to Zeke here. And Pollard did have over 1,000 rushing yards. And Dak Prescott, I mean, it was worth it, right? He did have the third most passing yards last year, so keeping him happy is very good. We also saw them pass at a much higher rate than other teams, and I'll get that percentage up in a second. But you have to expect we're going to see even more of that, right? We don't know what's happening with CeeDee Lamb, but they are going to figure out that contract as well. And now going back to Zeke. So I do think that is a downgrade, and that will hurt their run game, which is still very important in this day and age, even though it isn't utilized as much as the past. But big move, too, with the new defensive coordinator. And I don't know what to make of it. I don't know if it is an upgrade or maybe just staying the same. But now they have Mike Zimmer here, who is very good. But we know that they had Dan Quinn, who is also very good.
Of course, Dan Quinn goes to Washington. We probably should have put him on the departures in addition as well. Of course, there was always the thought that Jerry would fire McCarthy, bring in Quinn, just promote him. We thought that with Kellen Moore at one point as well. Kellen Moore, of course, is now the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia after 1 year with the Chargers. It's defensively. Just looking there for a second, we'll go back to the offense. You get Trayvon Diggs back after missing most of the season with the knee injury, tearing his ACL. Deron Bland, of course, set the record for most pick sixes in the season. I thought that was kind of more window dressing, more so than anything. I think Bland will take a nice, significant step backwards this year. I don't see him being an elite corner potentially again. Micah Parsons, of course, we know, fully healthy, ready to go yet again. DeMarcus Lawrence still there on the other side. They added Eric Kendricks. That was one of the few additions that they actually did make to shore up their linebacking core. This is still a roster that is very talented. They're still very talented. This is still pretty clearly to me a playoff caliber team. Now, you look at the rest of the division around it. We'll, of course, preview the rest of the division around it. The Giants still aren't quite there yet. Washington improved, but you are dealing with a rookie quarterback and a guy who hasn't been a head coach in about 5 years. And then Philly, who knows? They were arguably the worst team in the NFL by the end of last year, except for Carolina. But they improved their coordinators in a huge way. Vic Fangio comes up from Miami. Kellen Moore comes up from the Chargers to improve their coordinators, who were really not good at all last year, both defensive and offensively speaking. So that's a big improvement. But you look at Dallas, you look at the way that the schedule breaks down, you look at the win totals, you look at the divisional odds. Dallas behind us here at the South Point is a 10.5 on the win total. Juice to the under. I feel like that win total is high, if anything, Alex. where you look at their schedule right out of the gate.
Yep.
Again, they play Cleveland. That's a primo afternoon game. We'll get to the AFC North in a few weeks. I'm not particularly high on the Browns going into the year. This is actually a week one bet that if you want to look at Dallas, Dallas is an underdog at some shops right now. Don't mind that at all for the Cowboys right away out of the gate on the road in Cleveland. It's a tough game week 3 against Baltimore at home. You get the Steelers on a Sunday night. They play a short week against the Giants, who aren't particularly good. You get the Lions and the Niners back-to-back with a bye smushed in the middle, which is honestly a pretty good break that the bye is smushed in. You get extra rest going to the Niners, who have really just owned the Cowboys in these last few years. But schedule, for the most part, even withdrawing the AFC North, I don't think it's awful, even though I don't love the cross game in the AFC when they have to play Houston later in the year, who I think the Texans are going to take a nice leap forward, even with a leap that they took unexpectedly a year ago.
Well, that's what I was just going to point out. Week 8 to week 14 right there is a very tough stretch for them at San Francisco, at Atlanta. I know you might not be that high on the Falcons, but
Falcons are the rightful favorite in that division right now.
Hosting the Eagles, the Texans, then at Washington, which we know for whatever reason Washington plays the Cowboys very well. And then they've got the Giants and then the Bengals. So I think that stretch is the toughest part. Now, this team is 3-2 to the over in their win totals in the last 5 years, 3 straight years of 12 wins. Now, that's the toughest part when looking at Dallas is, can they repeat that? Can they go 8-0 at home like they did last year, 5-1 in division play, and 9-3 in conference? Like, that's going to be the toughest part. And as you mentioned, very talented roster. I don't think their defense is going to drop off too much, who held opponents to an average of 18.5 points per game last year. So if they can stay very strong defensively, they still have majority of their weapons offensively. Tough to do it again. Tough to get over 10.5 4 years in a row, though. And I can see why that is juiced to the under.
So Dallas, you see all the numbers on the left side of your screen. Dallas 15-1 to win it all, 8-1 to win the NFC, plus 120. They are the slightest of the division favorites over the Eagles right now at plus 120 in the division. You look at the way that everything is played out here. And again, some books have Philadelphia favored, other books have Dallas favored. So again, make sure you get the right pricing on the Cowboys right now. Behind us, it's plus 115 and plus 120. So it's legitimately tight. Other books at plus 115, plus 130. Be on the lookout for Dallas numbers that are higher than plus 130 if you want the Cowboys to win this division. I think them and the Eagles should be the same odds. Personally, I think they should be the exact same odds because of what we saw going out of last year with Philly. You need to show me going in before I actually look to play you in the NFC East. Now, we talked about it. It's been 22 decades since we had a repeat champion in this division. It has been topsy-turvy throughout. But when push comes to shove on this Cowboy team, the bet that I'm actually looking at, more so than anything, Dak Prescott, his passing yardage total at some books is 4,150. I want the over there. 4,500 a year ago.
Yep.
And I think their run game is going to be weak. I would look to bet Dak over his passing yardage total this year. That would be the way that I would look to do. That's at DK, by the way, the number that's out there. There's other numbers out there as well. But that's, of all the bets that are out there related to the Cowboys, that's the one I would look at. He's also playing for a mega contract, whether it's with Dallas or with someone else next year. There are going to be a lot of potential places that will probably want Dak and be willing to give him the biggest NFL quarterback contract ever that will exceed both Lawrence and Burrow, who are currently the highest paid guys out there. I would look to that. I think this is a big I'm not saying this is going to be a big win-loss season for Dallas, but I think it's going to be a big statistical season for Dak going into this offseason, especially with a limited run game that Dallas, I expect them to have.
Limited run game and then very good receivers, right? CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks was very good last year, had 8 touchdowns. And then Jake Ferguson, their tight end, who really had a great year last year in his third year or in his second year in the league. So I'm with you there. I would definitely say that we're going to see more passing from them.
Yeah, that's of all the bets. The win total, yes, it feels high, but wouldn't shock me even with a little more of a difficult schedule if they go 11-6. Wouldn't shock me. It would definitely be a lean to the under at the 10.5. I don't want anything to do with them on the conference or the division or that. I still think I would lean to Philly slightly in the division, but again, have a hard time betting that market with how the Eagles look and the season. But that's my favorite play by a pretty significant margin on this team would be Dak over 41.50.5 passing yards. That would be the only thing I'd even look at with this team, except for that week 1 bet that we talked.
I think that is a really good bet. And I didn't really look at which of these future bets on the Cowboys that I liked the most, but I think you just threw out a great one.
It is, again, throughout the next few weeks, we'll go through all these teams. Tomorrow's the Giants, which will be a lot of fun. A lot of new changes there in New York. Had a very fun offseason. Still probably not good enough. By the way, we're just going to at least throw this out there for everyone to at least look at this. Right now, there's no sack numbers on Parson that I'm seeing, which is a little bit interesting. And it's really only rookie numbers that are out there right now. So as these populate, we'll bring it up. Parsons, of course, I would anticipate that Micah Parsons, when those markets come out as a whole, because only the offensive stat markets are out there right now, Micah Parsons and Myles Garrett will probably be and TJ Watt will be your 3 leaders for sack leader props. I would look to bet Parsons this year. That would be another. Now, there is some concern with the change of defensive coordinator. Mike Zimmer, the head coach, Mike Zimmer, the D coordinator, even though he hasn't done it in a few years, still at his peak was one of the better defensive coordinators in the NFL. I don't think there'll be that huge of a drop-off, at least from Parsons' productivity levels with the change of DC. Maybe the rest of it, again, the law of averages will bland. I think he'll come back to earth because you just are not going to have a season like that again. And Trayvon Diggs coming off injury, that's why I'm not saying, that defense is clearly going to be as good as it was a year ago, just because I think the secondary, more so than pass rush, will be impacted this year.
I actually saw a quote from Mike Zimmer that said he really liked what Dan Quinn did with Parsons and expects to do the same thing, best player on the ball at all times. So that just goes along with your bet right there. He is 5-1 for defensive player of the year.
Yeah, that's the interesting one there, where defensive player of the year right now, it's Watt and Parsons, basically similar odds depending on the shop. Then with Bosa, Crosby, and Garrett right behind them. So it's a mix between those 5, Aiden Hutchinson's the only other one in most shops that's 10-1 or less. There are no bad choices I just mentioned. I don't think there's any bad argument, even though when we get to the Raiders, Max Crosby is going to be mentioned a lot by me because that defense starts and goes with him.
Yes,
and that defense, I think, is going to be quite good here in Vegas here this year. All right. That's all we got for you today. That's the Cowboys. Right now, lean to the under for me on the season win total with Dak over his passing yardage of 41.50.5. The best bets, at least on my end, for the Dallas Cowboys here in 2024. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff Parles.
And I'm Alex White. Thank you for watching this clip of Sports by the Book. Please like the video, comment, and subscribe.
We live stream the show right here every day on this channel. Also, you can catch the podcast version on your favorite podcast platform.
All the links are in the description below. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.